What's up, Candy Lickers? Pleased to meet you. Nice to know me. What you doing? You're listening to another edition of Casio's Cut, and I am joined today by a very special guest. It's my first guest that is not only a one-time Olympian, two-time Olympian, three-time Olympian, Mr. John Nunn. What's up, my man?
Hey, Casio. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right, I don't know where to get into this. You are a Olympic race walker.
I am. Yes. Used to be. Not doing it anymore, but
are you officially retired?
I never submitted my paperwork for it, but I called myself retired a couple years ago. So it's good. No more walking.
All right, so walking. Do you retire from walking? Do you just get skates from everywhere and just like I'm never walking again, or what?
It's these honorary skates they give you as you leave. They're like, there you go. You don't have to walk anymore. So.
Some people get a watch when they retire. Power walkers get now.
Skates.
We got to talk about how you get into it. You are, and I've read a little bit about it, but I'll let you tell a lot of it. You start off in track and field. You're a distance runner.
I was, yeah, in high school. Went to high school in Southern Indiana, ran cross country and track, and did fine. I mean, I won meets here and there and excelled at it, but didn't trying to get into college for it, and wasn't getting many offers for running. And then ran a cross country race up in Wisconsin, and found out they had a race walking team. And my dad thought it was so cool, and so he was like, "Let's go talk to the coach." And I remember at the time I was like, "This has got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard of." And went and talked to the coach, and he was like, "What are your running times?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, I'll give you full tuition if you want to come race walk for me." And I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!"
It was that easy.
Yeah. And so at first I was like, "No, I'm good, sir. Thank you." And I went home and thought about it, and then realized this was free college, and I could see where we go from there, and figured it at least would pay for my school and I could move on and do other things. And never thought it would get me where it did.
Until then, until you got a scholarship offer, you had zero concept of race walking.
No, I think my parents, when I was super little, we lived in Colorado, and they race walked for some reason. I'm not sure why or how they got into it, but I remember being little and them doing it and being like, this is, again, just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, why would you not just run? And so I think that's what enticed my dad when he found out they had walking at this college. It was Division II school, and he was like, "They're literally going to give you race walking scholarships. This is cool." And I was like, "Yeah, no." So
see, I have the opposite mentality. I'm like, "Why are we running? Let's just walk."
Yeah, I agree until you realize the distances you have to walk for races, and you're like, no. I'll run. Thanks, though. So
all right. So how now? You talk about how silly it looks. If you've ever, and if anybody's watching or listening, just go, if you haven't seen it in the Olympics, go watch videos. I mean, there's a lot of comparison to the mall walkers, the old people at the mall getting their power walk on. What's the official rules? You got to be on the ground?
Yeah, so there's two rules. One rule is 1 foot on the ground at all times. As soon as the foot hits the ground, the next rule pretty much comes into play, and that is the leg must be straight once it's vertically underneath your body. And the easiest way for that to happen is you land with a straight leg and carry it the whole way through. And then you can bend your knee to pull through to put it back on. But the reason why the mall walking comes in and the weird hips is physics comes into play. When you run, your femur bone is going underneath the hip socket, because you're landing with a bent knee, and it's the path of least resistance. But when you race walk, you're landing with a straight leg, and your femur with your tibia and fibia are now straight, and the path of least resistance is to go around the hip socket. So the femur kind of rolls around the socket versus going underneath it. And because otherwise it would go ahead.
You're actually moving your hips on purpose a certain way.
Yeah, and honestly, the hips, I mean, you're not actively trying to move your hips. It's basically just your body kind of doing it. Once you start landing with a straight leg, it's trying to find, again, the path of least resistance. And that happens to be to roll it around versus roll it underneath. So
you go to college on a race walking scholarship, and I mean, are you jumping right in and having success? What's happening?
No.
I mean, how big is this group? How big is your team? What are we doing?
So there were, it was in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and there were, how many guys do we have on our team? I don't know, 6 or 7 maybe.
Okay.
And I remember we went down to Indianapolis and did a 5K, and the guys gave me a crash course on how to race walk before the race. And the race started, and they took off and just destroyed the whole field. And there were 80-year-old guys beating me and walking. And I was like, I was not even good enough to be like on the mall walking team. I was just like, I quit. I'm not, this is just the dumbest thing. I'm not going to do this.
Not only am I not good at it yet, I look funny doing it.
Yeah. So I'm not fast. I suck. Everyone's laughing at me, and those who are laughing, I still can't beat them. So now it's just like insult to injury. And I was just like, forget it. So, but I went back and realized like I still had a scholarship I had signed for, and it took time. It took probably 6-7 months of long, hard training to really get it down. And I would work, the coach had a rule that as long as it wasn't -20 out with wind chill, we had to go outside. So
how nice
I would go out and walk like 10 or 15 miles on, and just freezing. Like my mask would be frozen in my face when I get done. And you'd stand in the shower for 40 minutes just to try to thaw out. And
when do you start having success?
Later. So let's see, that was in the fall of 1996. And then by the summer of 1997, I won junior nationals and made it to the junior Pan Am Games. Was in Havana, Cuba that year, which is pretty cool. So I got to go down to Cuba and experience like the old world communism and how it was prior to it being somewhat opened up for us like it is now.
That's wild. So, that's fast success in basically 1 year, right?
Yeah. And I think that the coach, everyone's like, well, the coach definitely saw something in you. And I think what he really saw was just that my fastest mile in high school was a 4:34 mile. And so I could run fast, but I think he was just throwing the dice and gambling. Like, could we turn a distance runner into a walker? They already have the distance, the endurance aspect of things. If we can just teach them the form, we'll see where it can go. And he was pretty successful at it. But go ahead.
Go ahead.
The hardest part, I think, for any coach or anyone trying to do that is convince someone to actually get into race walking, because running's kind of an outlier sport a little bit. It's not so much anymore, but in the beginning, and now you're asking people to leave that and go to even this more absolute rejected event that no one wants. So you don't get a whole lot of bites on it.
So we're going to the Pan Am game. We're Cuba. This has to be mind blowing for a college kid. Of what am I doing here? Am I race walking in Cuba?
Yeah, it was. I was 19, and the stadium was packed. There were they told us what we would do if Fidel Castro came to the stadium. He never did, but they were like, if he comes, here's how we're going to handle things. And everyone was trading Cuban cigars down there. Like, there's no question I'm incriminating a team from like 20 years ago, but we flew back through customs. I remember this now, in the Bahamas. They sent us through customs, and we went through customs, and they just grabbed bags and put it right back on the plane. And when we got on the plane, I looked around and saw all these early, like, freshman college kids. Everyone's holding up these massive boxes of Cohibas and everything. And I was just like, they're all literally, I mean, this year, like, there's thousands of cigars in these bags from people.
That was the influx into our country. Is your
team?
Yeah.
It was that team in 97, just Cuban cigars.
Did you take anything back?
No. No.
If you were to take anything back, would it have been cigars or something else?
It might have been some Cohibas.
Okay,
yeah,
nicely done.
Sure.
Did you hit those on a special occasion, or?
No, I don't smoke, so I just came back and gave them to. No, I ended up giving. I mean, the tobacco now, 20 years would be, I guess, for a memento, but
I ended up just giving them
away. I know. I just gave them away to people.
That's super cool. So we're going to the Pan Am Games. Are you having instant success there? I mean, how fast is this starting to go?
What
Wait a
did
minute,
I?
is this actually Olympic stuff?
Well, I'm trying to think. I think I got fifth there. I don't remember.
And
That was
that's
only
how long? How long of a
that was a
race?
that was a 10K on the junior level, and so that was
So it's like
6.2 miles on the
okay,
track, 25 laps around a track.
jeez.
And so did that and was okay. And then after I got done with that, I was born and raised Mormon, and so I served a 2-year mission in, and all my friends went foreign and picked up a new language and got all these cultures, and they tell you where you're going to go. And I opened my letter and I got sent to Las Vegas, English speaking. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Come on.
So you're what, 20, 21?
Yeah, so I was 20 at that point. I
And
went to
getting sent to Vegas.
Vegas for 2 years, and it was just like people were like, "Oh, we're gonna save the sinners," and you're like, "No, you're not. Everyone comes here to gamble. They don't want to listen to you." So,
Wait, I gotta talk. This is a side.
oh
This is
goodness.
awesome. So, like, what is your requirement? Are you standing on the street barking at people? Are you
Nah, I mean, I guess you can. We would go door to door. So
oh,
it's like the worst part is everyone talks about they don't want to talk about politics or religion. And now you're literally putting yourself in a situation where you're forcing someone to talk to you about religion,
at their front
let
door?
alone, yeah, at their own house. Yeah, let alone like an outlying religion that people think you're weird anyway. And so then you're just like, what am I doing?
Oh, I've
So
now imagined you knocking on the door, it's getting slammed in your face, and now you're power walking down to the next house. That's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
are you
And then I just
practicing or is that out of your life then?
no, so I still kept up. I found myself getting like honestly getting a little depressed on my mission. It just wasn't because you can be skiing on the slopes and surfing one day, and the very next day you're now rolling forward with a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And so I fortunately you're with a companion. You're told you got to be with them 24 hours a day. You do strict things: no watching TV, no dating, no reading other things except for church literature. And then you just study, and then you go out and talk to people. And so fortunately, our mission president realized I was frustrated and got me companions that would work out. So I would get up extra early, and sometimes they just sleep on at the track or sleep somewhere, and I would just work out by them
They knew
and
that
go
was
from
part of
there.
the
But
drill though, going in.
yeah, and as time went on over the 2 years, some of the guys started putting on weight on their mission, and they were looking for ways to start losing their weight. And so they started asking, could they be my companion? Because they knew that like we're getting up at 5 and we're gonna go for an hour somewhere.
How are
And
you
so
putting on weight? I feel like y'all are walking everywhere.
we were, yeah, but you'd be surprised. There's some very big missionaries that,
Is it because you do, is
that
it because like you said, you're going back and nothing really to do besides study, so you're just kind of
well, so that and two, like in Vegas, the Mormon church is pretty populated in Vegas and mostly out here in the West. And so you'd go to the church on Sundays, and they'd have a dinner calendar, and it would get passed around from the members. And so every day you'd go to dinner appointments with the members,
oh
and
yeah.
if it's like they'd be wealthier areas half the time, and people would be like, well, what do you want? And someone would go, well, I really like filet mignon. And so all of a sudden you'd have like filet mignon for 6 days straight, and you're just like, no, this is ridiculous.
There's
So
your sales pitch. That's what their sales pitch needs to be.
yeah, yeah,
You want to eat filet
exactly.
mignon 6 days a week? We'll send you to Vegas.
Come on a mission.
Come
So
on,
I was like, no. I lasted. I made it the whole 2 years and
so
finished it
then,
out.
do you immediately go, I have to get back in racing?
I did, yeah. Part of me was I think everyone who's older would admit this, that when you're young, you never think you're going to get old. You just
Right.
don't. When you're 21, 22, and you see someone who's 35 or 40, you're like, man, number one, that's ancient, and two, I got a whole lifetime before I ever hit that. And so I was really curious if I could make an Olympic team. And so I came home off my mission, and I moved in with a coach in New Jersey, and I started just training full time. And I lived in one of his spare bedrooms, and he coached me. And I started dating my ex-wife at the time while I was there, and made the Olympic trials for 2000 and finished 6th, I think, at Olympic trials. After
Wow.
I had gotten off my mission like 7 months before then. And so wasn't too bad of a turnaround, but I was like, okay, let's really give this 4 years and see where we go.
How are you training for walking? Is it are you I know you got to be in shape, and you're talking about working out even when you weren't racing, but I mean, did you have, hey, we got a strict eating regimen? Are we walking the full distance every single day? What's happens there?
So it's a lot like the same training schedule an elite distance runner would do. So we have some days that are distance days, some days are speed work days, some days are interval training, some days are more of a rest day where you're just going out for an easy 5 to 10 miles at a slow pace. It helps to understand that the two Olympic distances that I was training for were in kilometers, at 20 kilometers and 50 kilometers. So it was 12.5 miles and 31 miles was our other race.
Jeez.
And so you'd go out, and your long days, your long distance days would be 20 miles, literally. And so you'd hold usually about 8 minutes a mile pace walking.
Wow.
And hold that for the 20 miles. And then other times you do speed work, and you'd get down around, I don't know, 6 flat to 540 per mile pace in your speed
Walking.
workouts. Walking. Yeah.
Oof. Mine's a little slower. I
So
hadn't timed it lately, but when I walk a mile, it's a lot slower than 6 or 8.
most are. And so that's where, like, as time went on, everyone would always make fun of the sport I was doing. And I was just, there's some race walkers who get very angry and very bitter about how dare you make fun of our sport and everything. And I'm like, come on, man, for real. Like, it's a funny looking event.
Yeah.
And two, it paved a way for me to literally travel the entire world. And I made multiple Olympic teams, and still beat all these people running. Like, we jump in and do marathons, the rock and roll marathons, and I would come in a marathon. I came in the top 4% of the field every time walking.
Wow.
So I'd walk the marathon right around 3 hours and 20 minutes. And
Good
most people were
gracious.
4 to 5 hours would be. So
So
it's pretty wild.
are you your headphones guy? You can't do headphones at the Olympics or races, right?
No, you can't. And so, like, now that I've retired, like, I wear headphones and work out in them all the time. But when I was training, I'd never wear headphones, because you had to learn how to kind of deal with the demons in your head on your own, in the idea of constantly, like, being exhausted and wanting to quit. And typically music can help pump you up and keep you
Yeah.
moving, or listening to an audiobook, you forget about what you're physically doing and you're paying attention to what's being read to you. But in the Olympics, you can't have the listening devices. So I learned to just suck it up, and you'd be out there just fighting your head. So
So is 04 is your first Olympics?
'04 was the first one, and I did 20 kilometers. That one, it was in Athens. So
So an hour and a half for basically for 20 kilometers, and you're just in your silence.
you are, and so in races, it's a little easier because you're watching your splits. Because we go to like a 2 kilometer loop, and so you're doing like 9 to 10 laps on the loop. Um, in Athens, we started in the stadium, walked out to a loop, did 9 laps, and then came back and finished in the stadium. And you're watching your splits constantly, because you know whether you're on pace or not. You know if you went out too hard, if you didn't go out hard enough. You're looking at your heart rate. So there's enough things in a race that you're paying attention to. It's more just the monotonous long distance workouts that start to take a grind on you. So,
Is it like other racing? Is there drafting in speed walking?
um,
Not
yeah,
really. A
yeah,
little
no,
bit.
no, no. I would say there is, because more so in the 50K than in the 20K. In the
Okay.
50K, you've got 25 laps on a 2 kilometer loop, or that's the equivalent of 125 laps on a track. And so you find, just like how ducks fly, or birds fly, those guys in the front are working harder versus those in the back. And so if typically you get a group and you guys rotate every lap, the guys in the front will kind of fall back to the back, and the guys right behind them will move up to the front. And so you kind of rotate through this, and eventually it's just kind of an unwritten rule. Eventually guys will start falling off. And usually in a 50K, by about 30 to 35K, you're down to a couple people, and it's starting to become more of everyone's for themselves. Like, you're done being nice to each other and helping each other out. Now I just want to beat you. But you're just exhausted. You're like zombies out there walking half the time, and you're just like, I really want to beat you, but I don't even know if I can finish.
Is there, I'm sure not at the end, but is there trash talking out there? Is it a quiet deal? Or are people going past it on the left? Are we doing any talking?
No. There's not a lot of talking. There's some talking in the beginning. For like in a 50K, the first 25 kilometers, you might be talking about a lot of different things, because basically you're just trying to burn the road and burn the clock down to where you get about halfway through, and then the race starts getting serious. So you'll talk about a bunch of different stuff in the first half about
with competitors.
And that's not always the case. Sometimes if you don't speak the language, you're in a foreign country, you're probably not going to be talking much at all. Right. You'll just be hanging right next to them. But everyone, there's a sponge table and a drink table, and if it's super hot, they'll dip these sponges in water and set them out on a table. And if you're on the inside, you got an easy trek to grab a sponge, and then you're dunking them on your head and on your chest and stuff, trying to cool yourself off while you're racing. And typically whoever's on the inside will use what they need, and then they'll hand it to the person who's on the outside of them, who didn't get a chance to get a sponge.
So you don't ever go, hey man, let me over. I'm gonna need one of these sponges. You need to get out of the way.
Sometimes, I mean, you can fight your way over there if you want, but everyone also knows that it's a long race, and that's a lot of wasted energy just to get a sponge.
Right.
Like,
are you drinking every stop?
You're drinking every lap, every 2 kilometers for the most part. You're drinking.
You're just crushing it and going.
Yeah.
So you're out there on the track. Your first Olympics is Athens. You got to say, what's Athens like? What was that whole experience like? Your first Olympics, man?
Athens was fun. I mean, it's crazy to think that was almost 20 years ago now. It was a neat experience. I remember thinking that when I got to the Olympics, there were going to be like these half man, half machine, RoboCop looking people that I was going to race against. Like, I got to get there and I'm just going to get destroyed. And then I remember getting there, warming up and getting out on the track. And I looked around, and these were all the same people I had raced the last 2 years around the world. It was just, we were now at the Olympics and everyone was paying attention. And at that point, was standing on the starting line, I started to realize, like, oh, I know who's in the favor to win, and I know about where I'll probably finish and all. But it was a neat experience. Family got to be there, and people got to see it, and made for a really fun time.
How's that moment walking out? Did you get to do the walking out, but walking out on the opening ceremony? Are you with the team?
That's fun. It's the first time I did it, really anticlimactic. Like, it's going to be really cool, and then you get there and you come out of the stadium and you got 80,000 people screaming and cheering, and then again, maybe it's because I walked for a living at the time, but then you just keep walking, and you walk all the way. It's all parade athletes, and you're just walking and walking. You're supposed to keep waving flags and cheering, and eventually you're just like, okay, I'm done. So you kind of find your way into the inside and then hang out.
What's crazier, Vegas or an Olympic Village?
Ooh, that's a tough call. Because
people let loose after their event's over, right?
They do. And I think what the whole, like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas is probably pretty true for the Village as well. What happens in the Village stays in the Village.
So it's at least close.
Yeah. In some cases, I know for me, so you'd have to interview a swimmer to get the real story, because the Olympics is 2 weeks long. The swimmers go the first week, and the track and field goes the second week. On the 50K was typically usually the day before closing ceremonies or 2 days before. So I'm training the whole time through the Olympics.
You gotta be good the whole time.
Yeah. So I remember in London in I didn't make 2008, but came back and made 2012 in London, and London was just incredible. But I remember I'd go hang out with my daughter because she came over, and then I'd head back to the village at like 8:30 at night because I had practice the next morning. And as I was heading back in, all the swimmers were in club wear, and they were heading out to jump in cabs to go to all the nightclubs. And I was just, you see all the track athletes kind of like hanging on the fence, just wishing like, why couldn't we ever go first?
1 year. Well,
So yeah, it'll never happen.
Why
So,
will it never happen?
I have no idea.
It's just ingrained now.
It is. I just
Just-
remember in London, so the opening ceremonies are always on a Friday, and the closing ceremonies are 2 Sundays later. So or I guess 3 Sundays later. They're 2 weeks worth later. And I remember we had opening ceremonies Friday, and then Monday morning, so 3 days later, I was just still in my training phase for, I mean, I didn't race for another 2 weeks. And I was standing outside my kind of like building in the village, and there was a female American swimmer. And I was like, hey, and everyone wants to meet each other, and you just start talking. And I said, so how are things? She goes, good, good. I was like, so when do you compete? She goes, oh, I was on a relay team. And I was like, well, when was the relay? And she goes, we competed yesterday. And I was like, cool, how'd you do? And she goes, oh, we got silver. And I was like, well, congratulations, that's great. So like, what's next? And she goes, oh, no, I'm done. And I just remember thinking, we literally just started the Olympic Games. How are you done?
She gets to chill the whole time.
Yeah. And then she told me, I remember she goes, I said, so did your family come over? She goes, yeah. And she goes, and I have a boyfriend, and he came over. And I go, oh, cool. Are you guys going to go like hang out and do stuff? And she goes, no, he went back to the States. My parents are gone, and I'm going to stay around here for a little while. And it was like this unwritten of like, yeah, I know exactly what you're going to do. Whatever happens in the village stays in the village now for you for the next 2 weeks. This is ridiculous. So I was so annoyed. I remember just going back in my room and just sitting down being like,
I gotta go walk in the morning. I'm gonna let you go.
How am I angry? I'm at the Olympics and I'm angry. It was just like,
you need to join a walking relay team, bro. That's what you need to do.
Exactly. Get a medal and be done.
As a fat guy myself, far from an Olympian, what are you eating while you're training at the Olympic Village? Are you carb loading? Are you cutting weight? What are you doing?
No, you try to. So that is one thing I will give the Olympics is they try very hard to, when you walk into the cafeteria, it's this giant tent, and there's food cuisine from all over the world. And some of the biggest ideas, which I think has a lot of validity to it, is that it allows people to stay on the diets they were taking prior to showing up there. So even though you're in Athens, Greece, you're not going to get stuck eating Greek food for 2 weeks trying to train and race when your stomach's probably not going to handle it very well. And so it was cool. The nice thing was because I raced the second week, the first week I could like tour the world culinary wise. I would just go stop to stop for deciding what I was going to eat and where for that time. But the food was pretty good, except for Rio. Rio was a mess in 2016.
Wow, it's a mess.
That was so. Apparently, shortly before we got down there, I guess they were in some massive turmoil. They were looking to impeach their president. There was the whole Zika virus thing that was going on.
Oh yeah.
They didn't have money. This is some inside stuff that I found out when I got down there. So they had built all these apartment buildings. That's usually what the village is, and then they just fence it off for the Olympics period. Well, they had built all these buildings, and then the workers weren't getting paid prior to the Olympics. And so they were demanding that they get paid. And when the Olympic Committee for Rio or the government, whoever said they were going to pay, didn't have the money to pay, these guys walked off the job. But before they walked off the job, they took concrete and poured it down the drains in these apartments. And so the US brought in their own like general contractors and construction guys, flew them down, and they had to go like floor by floor in our building, because it was like was it 16 stories, I think was our building we were in. And they had to, they would pour water and listen for where it stopped, and then bang in the walls and replace the pipes and take out the cement. And so There was raw sewage backing up in some of the toilets. There was, I mean, and then the food, they couldn't pay the vendors. So all of a sudden they just found like, I mean, it was cafeteria style food that you would get, like cut rate prices, just whatever you could find. And so I found myself going like gluten-free and vegan while I was down there, because that food tastes better than the meat and the other things they had.
Eeh.
And a week before my race, I got food poisoning and was just out. They had to put me on antibiotics, and I was down for like 2 days, and I was like, well, this is not good. I literally have to walk 31 miles in a week. But I wasn't the only one. The doc was like, yeah, we're seeing a lot of this. So Rio was not an exception.
Who's supposed to pay for that? The country or the Olympic Committee or what?
The country and the local organizing committee. So the local organizing committee puts up, and then the International Olympic Committee is an interesting group of, interesting dichotomy that I always looked at it as they come in, and I don't even remember from the Simpson movie, that dome that they put over
Yeah.
Springfield.
Yeah.
I always envision like the Olympics like that. Like the International Olympic Committee comes in and just puts this dome over whatever city that they've now selected, and that everyone's supposed to be all like prestigious of, we've selected you to host the Olympics. And then when the Olympics is over, that dome gets removed, and the city and the government is left to deal with all the filth and the trash and the upkeep of stadiums, and golfing is not big in Brazil, but they could not, there were stacks of golf tickets in the athlete village in the US, sitting in there was kind of like an athlete lounge, and there were stacks of golf tickets that anyone could just go grab the golf tickets and go watch Bubba Watson and the other guys play. No one wanted to watch golf in Brazil, so they built this golf course strictly for the golf in the Olympics. And then when the games ended, the golf course was completely ran down and destroyed. I remember leaving the village to fly out of Rio de Janeiro, and the scaffolding stuff that was on the sides of buildings was already being ripped down by people.
Wow.
Like it was just being shuttered. And I was just like, yeah, this is how it works. They come in for 2 weeks, the whole world watches one city, and then when it's over, the IOC lifts up their dome and takes all their money and goes away, and the city's left to try to figure out how we're going to manage all this and what can we use these places for. So
as an outsider, you really don't know, speaking for myself, I mean, you see the IOC and quote unquote scandals, and every now and then an ESPN story or run, but you kind of, I think as the casual fan, you don't, I mean, I had no idea what they do. They're just putting on the Olympics, and so you've seen it from that inside, and what's left and what they're really actually doing. And I'm sure it's probably an amazing, I guess, story to tell there for the IOC and what actually is going on.
It was definitely interesting. And I found the first Olympic Games, London or Athens, I was so awestruck. Like I had worked so hard to get there. I made it. I didn't care what was going on. Like this was my Olympics and I was going to live it up. And then most people don't get the opportunity to make 3 Olympic teams. And I was fortunate enough, but by the 3rd Olympic Games, I was so jaded at what was going on that I was like, this is just ridiculous. I mean, they're using the athletes to make millions, if not billions, off of the athletes, but yet the athletes can't advertise their own personal sponsorship. They can't. No athletes getting paid to be there. And then everyone turns around and goes, well, you're representing your country. And I'm like, well, that's fine. But the IOC and the US Olympic Committee and others are making millions off of this with endorsements, with TV rights, with everything else. And the people who are the show ponies are all the athletes, and you're not paying them. You're just telling them, well, now you got your medal. And then if any of the athletes speak up, the answer is, well, now you're being un-American and unpatriotic, because you shouldn't be worried about money. You should be representing your country. But those who are telling us that are getting paid 6 figures a year to work for these companies, for the IOC, for the US Olympic Committee, and they're being paid to be down at the Olympics, wherever it's at, to then ensure we keep the rules. And I was just like, interesting. So by the end, I was like, it's probably time for me to move on. This isn't gonna go well. But
You've seen the man behind the curtain, basically.
Yeah. I made it to Oz, and I was like, yeah, this is not good. So, but there were some. I thought for a while afterwards, like, what did I mean, was this really worth it? Was this worth like 17 years of your life? And the biggest thing I realized was I have great memories. I got to see the world. I was paid to do it, and I made great friends. It was cool with family and stuff. So fun experiences.
You're also military. When did you start doing military in the middle of all this?
So I joined the military in 2001. The Army has a program called the World Class Athlete Program. It was established in the early 90s, I guess, by an act of Congress. They decided they wanted military personnel to have the same opportunity to make Olympic teams as their civilian counterparts. And the Army was really the only branch that jumped on it and said, hey, we're in. And so they formed a full unit with a commander and a first sergeant. And it's not, there are some units that soldiers, like, you never want to hand off your deadbeats to the next unit. You want to try to fix them and make them better. But it's definitely, to be in the World Class Athlete Program was a privilege. Like, you're a soldier first, and if asked to go do soldier endeavors, you would leave and go do that. But if you, if you said dumb things to the media that didn't represent the Army well, if you got in a fight out on the course or any of those things, there's a lot of little things that the Army will just say, listen, man, this is not your place anymore, and we're going to send you to a regular unit, and we're going to have you just do whatever your Army job was. And so I learned that real quick, and I thought, as long as I keep hitting my benchmarks, I hit the goals that they've set for me, I keep being a good ambassador, we'll see where this goes. And 17 years later, I finally was like, I think it's probably time to step out.
So on the flip side of the coin, they were very helpful and in your career, I guess.
Oh, immensely.
Them, compared to the IOC, they're actually doing things to help you.
Oh, definitely. The Army is a wonderful organization, and there was something to be said that it wasn't just, I had a lot of friends that have shoe contracts with Nike and Adidas and all these other companies, and you're just an entity to them, that if you're not performing, you're out. The Army is not that way. Like, you have a backing of millions of people who are proud to see you. So the idea, those guys throw on a Nike singlet and they know that they're representing Nike. It was really empowering at times to throw on a singlet and you had Army emblazoned across your chest.
Sure.
And everywhere you went, people would be screaming, "Go Army, go Army!" And so you realized, like, it was a lot more powerful, and you had a whole lot more support than these other guys. And if athletics wasn't for you, or you reach the end of your career, like, the Army has 200 plus jobs you can choose from. So it's not that it's the end of the world for you and you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? Like, so you go be a soldier like you're trained to be, and keep moving forward. So
I feel like you're recruiting me right now. I feel like I need some. You're about to go, look, we'll give you these Army socks if you just sign right here.
Yeah, you're a big guy. You could do shot put or discus.
Yeah, that's what I need to do.
Take care of you.
All right, let me ask you this: what happens to your body during and after a 50K? Are you? Because here's all I know. I know if you race, your nipples bleed. Are your nipples bleeding?
No, mine don't. Like, sometimes I would throw Band-Aids over them. Yeah, and they started to get strong because they realized they weren't gonna.
They started to get strong.
Yeah, I worked my nipples out. So, there's a couple situations that were crazy traumatic to me. One was I'd been really sick before the 2013 World Championships for track and field was in Moscow, in Russia. And we were doing a training camp in Linz, Austria for 2 weeks beforehand. Well, I was in San Diego training at the time, and I got really sick, massive head congestion, body aches. but I still had to catch a flight, and I had to get to Austria so I could be part of the train camp. And so they put me on, I took prednisone, an oral steroid, and that helped clear things up. But you can't be on something like that while you're racing. If you get drug tested, you now will become positive for. So I had to get off of it like 14 days or 20 days before. I can't remember what we had decided. I still had some of the residual effects from being sick. Well, I flew to Austria and I started training. I started training way too hard. So I get to Moscow, and a couple days before the race, I just was like, man, I feel tired, but we'll just rest a couple days and we'll be at this and ready to go. The race starts, and it was 80 degrees with massive humidity, and there was a river right by where we were racing, and it was black asphalt. So you got heat pounding down from above, and the asphalt's heating up, so now it's heating up your legs too. And I got to 23 kilometers of the 50K, and I started cramping. And I thought, well, this is odd. I'll never cramp this early. Back off for a couple minutes, calm it down, and we'll get rolling again. And I tried to back off, and cramping started coming more. And I started cramping in my jaw, in my elbow joints, behind my knees. And I was like, and I remember thinking like, okay, the Army, this is where the Army comes in. They're backing you. And I was like, well, I'm not going to just quit. And so I'm death marching. I finally finished the 50K, and when I finished, I locked up completely. They had to put me on a stretcher. They cut my uniform off. They IV'd me under the stadium for like 2 hours. They put me in a wheelchair afterwards and wheeled me to a bus. I got back to the hotel, and I just laid in bed. And the next day, I remember literally feeling like a garbage truck had just ran back and forth over me. Like every part of my body was hurting. And so that one was frustrating. And then 2 years later,
what place did you finish? Do you remember?
So I was the last finisher of that race.
So you were locked up bad.
However, there were like 80 some odd people in the race, and almost 40 of them had already dropped out. And so if you say how many started, and out of everyone who started, what place were you? I think I was like 43rd, 45th. Out of like 80
but half the field's already dropped out.
Half the field was gone.
Jeez.
Yeah, they just were like, screw this, and just walked away, or crawled away. I don't think at that point they could even walk. But 2 years later, we were in Beijing, China, and for World Championships, and the race was going great. And I got down to the last 10K of the race, and I didn't lock up, but I started really fatiguing. And I always took 5-hour energy, and I would sip a little bit of it. And in the last 50 minutes of that race, I took 5 full bottles of 5-hour energy. and because every lap I come through, I'd be like, I'm dying. I need more energy. And so I just take it, and I take it, and I take it. And I finished much better there. I can't remember what I finished, but I remember my daughter was with me over there. And I remember getting back to the hotel, and I got to the training room, and I just started crying like uncontrollably. I couldn't stop. And the trainers are like rubbing my back. And one of the sprinters, she came in and she was like, hey, can I get some? And she stopped. And I remember she looked over and she goes, did John just finish the 50K? And they were like, yeah. And she goes, oh, I'll come back later. And she just left. She was like, no. This is because they all watch the races on TV, and they would see like, why would anyone do this? This is ridiculous. But I remember then I was so overdosed on caffeine. I tried to sleep, and I would sleep all through the night. I'd sleep for like 30 minutes, and I'd get up and go throw up, and I'd come back and sleep for 30 minutes and then go throw up. And it wasn't until I went to physician assistant school, and we were in class, and they were talking about the toxicity level of caffeine, that it's roughly between 1.2 and 1.4 grams of caffeine. And as they're talking about this, I immediately started Googling how many grams of caffeine are in one 5-hour bottle of.
Gosh.
And I used the extra strength bottles, and it was I want to say it was like 240 milligrams. And since I had 5, I was sitting at just over 1.2 grams of caffeine in my body within 50 minutes. And then, and the instructor's going through all the things that like, how deadly this can be. It can cause tachycardia. It can shut down your heart. It can, like, you can literally go into cardiac arrest.
So not only are you have all those symptoms, you're walking on top of it. You're race walking on top.
Yeah. And I remember I was getting mad. I was getting more and more mad because I was like, why can't I go faster? Because I keep downing all this 5-hour energy, and the next time I'd be like, give me another one. And I'd be screaming at my aid station guys. And they'd be like, okay. And it wasn't until like months later, I ran into one of the guys who handled my aid station. He was telling me, he goes, dude, I wasn't going to say it at that time, but I didn't think that was a good idea, what you were doing. I was just like, yeah, but I wouldn't have listened to you anyway. Like, I would have just grabbed the bottles.
You want, like, I feel like now you got the sponge with the 5-hour energy in it. You want it everywhere now.
Yeah. Just soak it in my pores. So,
wait, do you think it did help you, or did it hurt you ultimately? You think?
I think it got me through the race. Yeah, I think I was struggling.
Well, good for your body, but it got you through the race.
Oh, it was awful, potentially catastrophic for my body. Like, because I remember sitting in the training room just crying, like tears pouring down my face, and I was like, I don't know why I'm crying. I was like this grown adult man just crying, and I was like, what happened to me? And they were like, you just had a rough race. But none of them had known that I had taken all of that. And it wasn't until after.
It's on different levels, but you're kind of like the ultimate lazy guy. You want to walk everywhere. You're down in 5-hour energy. Meanwhile, we're doing the same thing, but we're just sitting on the couch. And
yes, exactly.
You got to take it to extreme for us.
Yeah. And then Rio was okay. It was really hot. Same type of thing. A lot of guys struggled. I got through Rio, and then I remember going back in a car to the village, and I was like, I just want to take a shower and just get a massage and be done. And I was too tired to stand to take a pee in my bathroom, and so I sat down and I took a pee, and I like grabbed the towel rack and stuff, and I'm standing up, and I turn around to flush the toilet, and all I did was just take a pee. But I turned around and flushed the toilet, and before I flushed, I looked down. The entire toilet bowl was red, just covered red. I had rhabdomyolysis. I was peeing blood. I had worked so hard in that 50K that I was getting muscle breakdown, and it was now breaking down and processing through the kidneys on a small level, along with blood. And so I took a picture because I knew that the medics or the docs that were down would want to see. And so I took a picture, and I went down, and I was like, hey, I think I have a problem. And I showed the picture to the doc, and he just smiles, and he goes, peeing blood, aren't you? And I was like, I am. And he was like, yeah, why don't you hang out here with us for a little while? We'll just watch you. I was like,
what's the recovery? 5-hour energy?
Yeah, no, I wish, huh? I'd be like, I can do that.
What are you doing, IVs? What are you gonna do?
It was just fluid. He was like, I want you to hang here. He goes, eventually, I just want to make sure every time you pee, I want to come in and look, because I want to make sure the color should get lighter and lighter.
Oh yeah.
Because your kidneys are functioning again and doing all right. And I was like, okay, and it did, and things were fine. But I think that was like at the end of that one, I was like, you know what? I think I kind of want to be done with this. Like, I've had my uniform cut off. I've puked all night long from overdosing on caffeine, and now the icing on the cake is now I'm pissing blood. And I was like, yeah, I literally am just walking. Like, it's not like
that's the number one life rule. If you start peeing blood, you got to quit whatever way you do it.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
It's time to shut it down.
Yes. So at that point, I was like, I'm out. And then the Army, the Secretary of the Army came down to Rio as part of the closing ceremony delegation. And at that point, here I was like 38 at the time. And I remember just thinking, I'd lived enough life that I wasn't uncomfortable talking to someone in a higher level position anymore. And so they introduced us to us. They had all the Army guys who had made the Olympic team come see him. And we were talking. And finally I was like, you know what, forget it. I'll just ask. And so I went up and I was like, hey, sir, I want to apply to the Army's physician assistant program. Would you be willing to write me a letter of recommendation? And he just looked at me and smiled and he goes, I'd be honored. That'd be great. And I was
Wow.
like, no way. So he wrote me a letter and that definitely helped me. And I got into the PA program that the Army had. And I guess at that point kind of hung up the race walking shoes and was like, let's move on.
So I got to ask, I got to circle back to two things. One,
Yeah.
in here somewhere, I guess it was 2012. Is this where all the stories of your baking cookies coming in?
Oh, yeah. So, my daughter, unfortunately, her mom and I didn't last. Ella was 2.5 or so when her mom and I got a divorce. And I found that, a divorce is not something I would wish on anyone. No one ever gets married with the anticipations they're going to get a divorce.
Right.
And so it's crushing for every party, whether you're right or wrong or whatever the reasons were. There's two sides to every story, and both sides are handling it in their own ways, but it's crushing to both sides. And so I found that I really enjoyed cooking, because if I would go spend a lot of money on an expensive piece of meat and I got too preoccupied worrying about what was happening with the divorce, I would ruin the meat and it was a waste of money. And so cooking forced me to ignore what was happening in my life, and I could plan and make these massive meals. So I learned how to cook, and I cooked these massive meals, and then I invite 10 or 15 people over, and we just have a big friendly dinner and pass the bowls. And Ella was little and kept wanting to help, but she couldn't be around the stove. And so I realized baking was probably a better route for her. So we would do cakes and she would decorate them, and it just kind of went on and on. And eventually she wanted to try cookies. We tried them, and it was probably the competitive side of me. I remember thinking, after I had some cookies from the recipes I saw, I was like, these are awful. I'm pretty sure I can do better. And so in my free time, I just started like experimenting and trying to make my own recipes. And then people started being like, these are really good. I want to buy them from you. And I was like, listen, one, I race walk. People already make fun of me. Like, I'm not going to start selling cookies on the side. Like, my manhood needs to stay intact in some portion.
He's a walker. He's a baker.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would just, people would be like, hey, we're all getting together. Can you make some cookies and bring them? And I was like, sure. So I would bring cookies. And then people started giving me like $20 handshakes and $50 handshakes. Hey, man, thanks for the cookies. I appreciate it. And I was like, man, you don't need to pay for this. No. We would have paid a lot more for them. And I guess once you start getting money in your hand, you realize like, hey, maybe this can go somewhere.
Right.
And so then Ella really got involved in it, and she started being little, and she was in kindergarten, first grade at that time. And so she started like marketing to her friends and bringing cookies into class. And then we had a connection who had it's always who you know, and someone knew someone who knew Rachel Ray. And so before we knew it, like we had a little tiny little paragraph about the cookie company in Rachel Ray's magazine.
Nice.
And then every time I made an Olympic team, all the NBC correspondence guys, everyone's always looking for like that niche story. Yeah. Aside from athletics, what's unique about you? And so they would always call, and like every Olympics, they wanted to do something about the Olympic or about the cookies. And so like the LA Times did like a front page article at one point on the cookies. And
are you trying to pitch them other stories, or are you getting?
Yeah, no, I was like, I have other things, like I'm single. You can put in there that I'm single and looking and they were like, no, the cookies and your daughter. That's a really cute story. We're gonna go with that. And I was like, gosh darn it. But it eventually all of a sudden like people started buying them, and it wasn't a situation that we were making a killing by any means. You're making like, I don't know, a couple grand a year, but that couple grand all of a sudden paid for Ella's plane ticket to like Beijing, China, and then the hotel and covered all. So literally like every international team I made, Ella's coming with, and it really was free for me because we would just the cookies were just kind of like a side hobby. And then people were telling me like, don't go to PA school, just do the cookies. Like we can get angel investors and you can make a killing at this. And I was like, no, I'd rather just have it as a hobby, please. I don't want to go into cookies.
So you're completely out. Do you ever bake? Or
No. I make them. I still make them because when I got I made them through. So the first 16 months of PA school was complete hell. We took 101 college credits in 16 months.
Jeez.
We were in class 8 hours a day. You'd study. This is not exaggerating. I would study 4 to 5 hours in the evening every night. And then weekends, you'd study 12 hours a day, usually. And then you test twice a week. And if you fail certain tests, you can fail out of the course, on and on. So I would make cookies because I found it relaxed me, just kind of like during the divorce. Like it gets me away from what's happening in life and I can just focus on food, and food's always good. So
right.
I would make cookies and bring them into my classmates and then the instructors. And then when I got into clinical rotations, everyone always told me like, hey, your nurses are your front line. If you can keep your nurses happy, they will cover for you. They will take care of things. They will adjust meds if you screw it up. They will. And so I just made it a point. Every new rotation I started, I'd bring in tons of cookies.
Yeah.
And then the nurses were like, hey. And so it started to precede. Like I get to the next rotation and the nurse would come up to me and she'd be like, so when are we getting cookies? And I was like, gotcha. But the nurses, I wouldn't say like,
now.
Yeah, the nurses, it's not that they loved me, but I was always friendly and tried to be kind, and it paid off because they'd go out of their way, and I'd have a tough preceptor, someone who liked to yell at you or make you feel bad, and the nurses will pull you aside and they go, listen, make sure you answer with this answer, say this, do this. He likes when this happens. And
nice.
so I was always getting the inside. And so cookies kind of bought my way into the nurses through school. And so now I still like, even at the clinic, I still make cookies and take them. And
what's home run? If you go, I got to deliver 100% home run, what flavor are we getting?
The one that seems to be the go-to, there's I guess my version of a black and white. It's a dark chocolate with white chocolate, and then there's black and white chocolate drizzled on the top of it.
Come on with it. Come on now.
I'll send you some. I'll send you some. That's all too easy.
Any of them did you make and you go, oh, that was trash?
I'm trying to think.
Any bad flavors?
There were some that were, and we haven't messed around with flavors a lot recently, but there were some that we didn't think were going to be good that turned out okay, but others, I'm trying to think what they were. I don't even remember.
So you've had a good record then.
Two. Yeah, there was one, Ella, and part of it helped that Ella was so little. Like a little kid's mind has no boundaries. And so you can ask them a question and they can think so far outside the box because they haven't been conditioned to stay in a box. And so I asked her, I was like, let's make a movie cookie. I was like, no chewy things. We got to take all the chewy things out. But what do you want? What do we have at the movies? And she was like, okay. And so we went with popcorn, Whoppers, Reese's Pieces, and toffee bits
in the cookies.
I put that in, and I was like, no way is this going to be good. And then we ate it, and I gave it to a couple other people, and they were like, this is absolutely amazing. So we called it Let's Go to the Movies.
Yeah.
And Ella would she'd go cart them around and give them to all her friends. And it was, the cookies were fun. And I always thought it would be fun now as a PA, like I have a little bit of extra income. It would always be fun to get a food truck and just have it as a hobby, because then I don't have to worry about like being in the green every time or being in the black and making profit. I can do it just for fun and have it be a hobby.
What's the name? So, you've clearly thought of a name. If you've thought of a food truck.
There's one I thought that would be kind of cool. I could call it Best Friends, and it's the whole milk and cookies.
Yeah.
And put those on, or what was it? There was one other one. Pardon me. I can't think of what the other one was.
I thought you were going to do Olympic tie-in, gold medal cookies or something like that.
Yeah, gold. I could do gold medal. But I'm so jaded about the Olympics that, pardon me, they would probably want a cut of it.
Oh, yeah. So you can't use that. You can't use it.
Like, no. No, you're not taking a cut.
All right, we're about to get to the countdown. Well, I must say, if anybody listens to this, they know I love mashed potatoes. I'm the million tater man. So if you ever figure out how to get mashed potatoes in a cookie, do it. Work on it.
All right.
Any kind of potatoes.
Potatoes.
Look at your brain working already.
Wait. Have you had crispy crowns?
Crispy crowns.
So tater tots. Like I really like tater tots.
Love tater tots.
And they was it Orida? You can go get them in the freezer section. They're basically just the ends of tater tots, so they're crispier.
Just the tiny, like super crispy parts.
Yeah, they have they're like look like little discs, but they crisp up a lot better than all the tater tots. I don't know. Give them a try. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Give them a try. Crispy.
All right, we're gonna go to the countdown in 1 second. In 10 questions, I ask everybody, but I gotta double check because you made my brain think of it. You said earlier you need to do the right things on the track when you join the Army, and that included, you quote said, no fighting on the track. Are there fights on the track?
No.
Now just imagine, like, get out of my way, and now you are fighting like a NASCAR race.
Well, there's every so often there's weird stuff. Like you get in a tight pack and someone will cut someone off. Someone can throw a bottle at someone else. I haven't seen actual fist fights in race walking. I have seen them in running though, where guys cut them off and someone will just look. And you can find them on YouTube. The dude will just look at the other guy and just throw a punch. And so if I ever threw a punch in a race, I could probably expect to be removed from the program. That's probably pretty fair.
That's a standing rule, kind of like peeing blood.
Yeah.
You put it another standing rule.
Yeah. Standing rule. You punch someone, you're out. So.
All right, let's get to these questions. 10 questions that I ask everybody. The countdown. We're going to start with 10. Name something that's a perfect 10 in your life.
I'm gonna have to go with my daughter, Ella.
That's good.
Perfect 10. I enjoy her.
Married people say wife, and non-married people usually say kids. I knew it was coming. Number 9. 9 is the German word for no. So name something that's no more in your life. Something you want to write off. And that could be literally anything.
I'm gonna say world hunger. Sounds crazy, but with the amount of resources that are available, it's so surprising to me that there are people who starve to death daily in this world. And it just seems a little astronomical, and partly probably because I just enjoy food so much that
I was about to say you need to give cookies to all of them. When that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Then they'd get diabetes, but they'd still be alive. So we'd be okay.
I mean, they're alive, but we got a lot of problems we got to talk about. All right.
Yeah.
Number 8. Number 8. What do you want your last meal to be? What's the last thing you ate when you go out? Now you can mix and match. I tell everybody, you could do, hey, I want this from this restaurant, this from this restaurant, this from my grandma. Piece this together. What's your ultimate last meal?
So I've actually thought about this before. Okay. There's a, I'll tell you real quick.
Like you've thought of everything if you walk all this much.
Well, yeah, because you're walking and like, I would think I would get through like 45 minutes of it just thinking if I won like the Mega Millions, how would I spend this money? And like 45 minutes later, I'm like done with the workout. I was like, oh, of course I've never won the lottery, so it'll never come. But there's a book called Last Supper. And there was a journalist who interviewed 50 of the top chefs in the world. And she said, you're going to die in your sleep. Tonight's your last supper. What do you eat? Okay. And it's a fascinating book because these are like world-renowned chefs for what all they get. And some of them get real high end, and others are just like, give me an In-N-Out burger and Krispy Kreme and stuff. But I'm a huge fan of mussels. I love mussels with a broth.
Okay.
With that broth. So what I would ask for would be a bowl of mussels, fresh, like piping hot, and then a fresh sourdough baguette with Kerrygold butter. And I could tear the baguette.
Fancy stuff. That's that fancy butter.
Oh, that butter tastes so good. Put that on that baguette, dip it in the juice from the mussels. Man.
Is it from a certain place? Are you making it? Or
no.
It doesn't matter. Just bring it.
Yeah. Just bring it.
Dessert?
Just bring it. That bread and butter, I think, would be
Is your
dessert.
dessert?
I really like dessert. I have a total sweet tooth. Maybe one of my cookies. There, we
Your
can
own
say
cookies.
that.
Yeah, go out. All
Yeah,
right.
I'll have a cookie on my way
What
out.
are you drinking with it?
I'm a huge fan of soda water. Sounds so dumb,
Just
but
straight
I
up
think
soda water.
I drink soda water constantly, and I think it's because like I like the idea of thinking I'm drinking soda, but without the calories or the sugar. And
Like the
so,
LaCroix stuff?
yeah, like here, I don't know if you can, I can show you. Let me flip this around. Like by my bed, I have a whole case of
Yeah.
just Costco soda water
You feel like you're
that I do.
cheating.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I like it.
I like soda water. It's good.
All right. Number 7, when you're 7 years old, what do you want to be when you grew up?
I actually wanted to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be an astronaut.
We're in Huntsville. We just got Space Force,
I
man.
know.
We got
So,
everything.
so here's what I'm actually doing is this was a running joke in PA school because I had talked about it, and all my classmates were like, "You are way too old," and I was like, "Okay, well, every year the Army has an application process for astronauts, and it starts in March. So I fully
It's you.
plan on putting together a packet and submitting it this March, and I'll let them tell me no. They'll be like, "No, you're way too old," but
At
that's
least it's
fine.
official then.
Yeah, at least I'll be like, "You guys were right." But if they say yes, then I can turn and just make this awesome video and be like, "Suck it" to all my classmates. Be like, "Someone's going to space. And it's not you."
Now we got out of this world cookies is now the new
Yeah.
thing.
Yes, I need to do that.
You need to be the first astronaut to bake cookies on the space station.
They could. That would be awesome.
If you
Yeah.
don't work out, come to Huntsville. We got space camp here. You can do this
Perfect.
underwater astronaut trainer, bring the daughter.
Yes.
Come on.
All right.
Get you on the thing that makes you throw up since you're used to that.
Yes, I know all too well. Perfect. I'm in. I'm in.
All right. Astronaut first, second place, Huntsville, Alabama. That's your silver for this race.
Those are my goals. I like it.
All right, 6. How do you want to end up 6 feet under? How do you want to go?
In my sleep.
Just peacefully gone.
Yeah, I don't care to go out with a bang. I would love to just go to bed one night and just not wake up. It'd be great.
Stay off the 5-hour energy.
Yeah, exactly.
5-finger discount. What's the last thing you stole?
Last night.
Oh.
I had it's not as big as what you think. So we have to do the COVID tracker and stuff here at Fort Irwin.
Okay.
And I had to do some memos because I had some soldiers going into quarantine, and I stole a pen off of one of the nurses' desks. So because I needed to fill out the memos to get them in the
middle
quarantine.
of the pandemic.
Yeah, stealing. Thief.
Do you steal from hotel rooms? You've been to a lot of hotel rooms.
I guess this is the no again. Right. There have been times like I'll work out and my clothes will be soaked and I'll have to check out and I'll be like, man, I'm not going to let like smelly, awful clothes. I'm not putting them in my bag and I'm not going to like hang them in my vehicle while I drive. So I roll them up in a hotel towel and then just stick them in my bag.
Look at that move. So your towel collection is strong.
No. I try to stay at the same chain. I won't name the chain because I don't want them to put me on their do not stay list for stealing their towels. But I just happen to relocate it to the next hotel.
No, you don't.
The next time I go. I have a couple
times. No, you do not.
I have a couple times.
Come on!
To be fair, I have a couple of their towels still here.
When you started saying what you were saying, I thought you were going to say you put them in a pillowcase. So towel is way less than what I would have went with.
No, I roll them up in a towel because I need that, like the sweat and the water to be absorbed. The pillowcase isn't going to absorb it. Yeah.
All right. That's a good call. That's a good call. All right. Number 4. This might be interesting with you since you are an athlete. Do you even know what a Little Debbie is?
I do. I grew up on them.
All right. So I ask everybody, mashed potatoes and Little Debbie's are the 2 things we talk about here. Little Debbie's, Mount Rushmore. Give me your top 4 Mount Rushmore of Little Debbie's.
All right, so we'll go with number 4 would be the red velvet or that velvet cake.
Okay.
A Little Debbie. Number 3 would be their cupcake with the cream in the center of it.
All right, nice.
2 would be the oatmeal pie.
OG, okay.
And I am number 1 by far. I'm a huge fan of the fudge rounds.
Fudge rounds.
Have you had those?
Oh, love the fudge rounds.
Okay,
It's a rare number 1 appearance on these.
Is it really?
It is. Is it on? It's on some top 4s, but it's not. You might. I'll have to go think about it. You might be first number 1, and you said by far.
Oh, by far. I love that. Like anytime when I haven't had a lot of Little Debbie's recently, but
Yeah.
growing up, like in middle school and high school, anytime I got the chance to get fudge rounds, I'd be dragging the box to the cart for my mom and being like, "Can we please have these?"
Did you do anything fancy with them? Freeze them, heat them, anything, or just
no?
scarf?
I think I was too virgin in my culinary abilities at that point. Just inhale. And, man, they were good.
Let's just get a fudge round in my body. Everything's a race with you. You got to
put it in my mouth. I want it.
All right, number 3 albums on a deserted island. And so I preface this by everybody. You aren't saying, because this is how you start arguments, go, these are the greatest albums ever. These are just 3 albums you could listen to nonstop on repeat for the rest of your life. So you could go a live album, you could go greatest hits, you can go a lot of ways.
Albums are tough for me. I can give you artists. Does that work?
Okay. All right, if you can't do an album, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say number 1 would be Train. I really like Train.
This
number
is fitting
2,
right in with walking and baking now. You got Train.
It is. Number 2, I know it sounds dumb, but for some reason, for years, they started to get big a little bit, but for years, every time I bake or cook, I always tell Alexa to play AJR.
Okay.
So
yeah, they are just now starting to get popular.
I don't know why, but for years I've listened to AJR. And then 3, if I'm stuck on an island, I would want Now That's What I Call Music collection.
Okay. It's the pop jams to get you through.
Getting everything, yes.
Is there a certain year? 27, 14?
It probably, I don't know what year.
This is how I know you listen to a lot of them, because you can almost tell me what year. That means you listen to a lot of them.
It would be the late 90s. What was that? They only came out, but probably like periods 5 through 10.
All right, I got now. That's probably. I want to look it up. Oh yeah. Oh, they're up to 77, bro.
Yeah, they're way ahead.
This is out of control now. Now that's what I call hits. They even got one now. 100 forgotten 90s hits. It's spread out now. It's too much.
It's ridiculous.
So you're gonna go. Agreed. You're gonna go. And now that's what I call hits. There.
Yeah, that works.
All right, we can handle that.
Okay.
All right, number 2. I want to know first and last concert you went to. So your first concert you ever went to.
First concert, I was in high school. It was a free concert. We went to Cincinnati, Goo Goo Dolls.
Strong. So that was with parents, or that was your first one where you went, I'm out?
By myself.
Yeah.
Went, grabbed a friend, and we drove to Cincinnati and watched Goo Goo Dolls play.
All right.
And this is going to date me as far as for how long it's been since I've been to last real concert.
Well, you've had some things going on.
Yeah. The last in-person concert was One Direction in the Rose Bowl with my daughter. And they're now broken up.
That's a strong concert.
Yeah. But Ella was so little. And I remember we got back home, and I laid her in bed, and she's like, Daddy, why are my ears ringing? Like, she could not. It was the first concert she'd ever gone to, and she couldn't understand. And she's like, why do I feel so horrible? And I was like, that feeling is what people who drink feel like. So don't ever drink. And she was like, okay. And then just passed out.
Who's your favorite? Now, Liam, Louis, Zane?
I don't
Harry?
have a favorite. I literally went
for
my daughter. I will say that I like Harry's music now as an individualist. I think his stuff is
I ain't ashamed. I got a crush on Harry.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
I got a crush on Harry. Number 1, be interested to see if you're a fan. I always ask if you could be a wrestler, old or new. Who would you be? And then we'll add on if you are a wrestling fan and give me a tag team partner.
Ooh. So I grew up with wrestling, with the old WWF. I had the
Okay.
ring. I had I had the guys, the figurines.
Yeah.
I was always a fan of good old JYD, Junkyard Dog.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought it was amazing that this dude, one, lived in a junkyard and wore a chain, a big chain around his
The
neck
chain set it off.
that he would come out and just go to town with people on. And I was
And
like,
he's
man, this
barking.
dude's
He's
good.
crawling around.
Yeah. And then I know his tag team partner at times, was it Hillbilly Jim?
I'm sure they tagged. Yeah, they tagged.
Yeah, I enjoyed Hillbilly. I don't know what I liked about like the redneck like ways, but I just thought they were
We're charming.
so we're charming. They were so unique and cool. I just thought it was awesome. This dude lived in a junkyard. How do you live in a junkyard? How awesome is that?
This is all going to be explained when you finally visit Huntsville. All this will be open up. I'll take you to the people that live in the junkyard.
Good. I'll be like, I found home.
I'll take you all the hillbilly gyms I know. We're going to handle all this. You're going to be an astronaut. And we're going to feed you Little Debbie's and fried food and just eat cookies the whole time.
That's perfect. I'm in. 100%.
Well, man, I should just want to say, one, thank you for a lot of things. Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for representing our country. Staff sergeant, right?
Well, now I'm a first lieutenant because now I'm a PA in the Army.
Okay.
So I'm an officer with the 11th Cavalry Regiment, ACR.
Are you big on social media? Do you want to give it out or no? You keep it.
I am. Yeah. I mean, I have no. I have Instagram. I use more than anything. It's at John Nunn 78, and then Twitter is Johnny Walker 04.
Oh,
and
nice.
And Facebook, Facebook is just John Nunn. You can find me. They verified all the Olympians, so I have a little check mark next to it.
Oh, I'm jelly.
Which makes everyone, so now like all my daughter's little friends all follow me and want me to follow them.
Because you got a blue check mark.
And I was like, no, I'm not following your friends. I'm sorry. You're 16. This is weird.
I am going to follow you, though. I do need more verified friends, John. I need this.
I'll follow you back. Don't worry.
I need this in my life.
Yes.
Wait, what was the Instagram? That's the one you used. What was it again?
Instagram, John Nunn 78.
Okay.
At John Nunn 78.
Weird, stupid question. Did you ever have a Walkman?
No, but not on Instagram. The only closest one was Twitter, where I did John.
No, did you ever have a Walkman?
Yeah. No, I did long before I ever race walked.
Really?
I did growing up as a kid. Yeah, with the cassettes and using the pencil to fix the ribbon. And
did you ever have a nickname?
In college they gave me a nickname, Freddie Joe, and I was like, what the heck is this? And apparently because I was in high school in Indiana, and one of the Indianapolis Colts players, I think he was a lineman, he was this big black dude and his name was Freddie Joe Nunn. And so they were like, oh, well, now you're Freddie Joe because you're from Indiana. And I was like, that is the dumbest linear line that you just drew for a nickname. Like, there's so
the same last name in Indiana.
I have the same last name, and he plays for the Colts. I don't even think the dude was from Indiana.
Are there people that still call you Freddie Joe?
There's one. I have one high school friend. Like every time he calls, he's like, "What's up, Freddie Joe?" And every time I'm like, "Yo, you are the only one who has ever continued to call me that."
I had, when I was a freshman, I decided to make the leap from glasses to contacts, and I played football, and so I had to get these sports goggles. And so I tried I don't know if you remember, I called them the Steve Sabo back in the day, the baseball player. And I just didn't like them. They didn't fit good. So I found these black rimmed ones. And I wore those. I was like, "Oh, these are the jam. I'm gonna kill these out on the field." So I'm a freshman, and I go running out on the football field, and the senior goes, "Hey, look, it's Fat Buddy Holly." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's Buddy Holly." And I'm like, "No, that's not gonna be my nickname, Buddy Holly." And they're like, "Yeah." And so I have like a handful of dudes this day that'll call and they go, "What's up, Buddy?" They're not saying Buddy, but it's Buddy Holly.
I envision you running out. And as soon as they call the name, you just keep running this circle and just running right back inside Be like, no.
You forget I'm walking. You forget I'm walking.
Or you're walking.
Yeah, but they're like, it's Buddy. I'm like, who's Buddy? This is gonna be awesome. Who's Buddy?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, and then of course, if a senior gives it to you, you're stuck.
It's over, and
Yeah,
now you got 4 years with it.
It's game over. I got rid of the goggles that still didn't go. You know me. I'm like, I can't ever wear these again. My dad's like, we paid $150. You're gonna wear them till you're 50. I can't wear them ever again. All right, my man. Thank you. I know you're busy. I appreciate you sharing your story. It's fascinating to me.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Are you going to end up being a mall walker and be like, these kids don't even know?
The possibility's there. I do have a coach who used to go to the mall in New Jersey and walk in the winter, and they actually kicked him out. They were like, they stopped him, security, because they would open the malls in the Northeast in early mornings for the older people to go in and walk. Yeah. And he went in to train because it was so cold and icy outside. Indoors. And so he was training, and security stopped him and they kicked him out. And their words were, "You are going to hurt someone. You're going too fast. You need to leave." And he was like, wait, you're kicking me out of the mall for walking. I just want you to tell me verbally, yes, I'm kicking you out of the mall for walking too fast. And he was like, okay, I'll leave.
That's a new one. That's definitely a new one.
Like, dude, I straight up got kicked out of the mall for walking too fast.
Does the daughter appreciate the Olympics?
She does. She was 6 months old when we went to Athens, and then London she remembers and had a great time. And then Rio, she had an absolute blast because one of her friends and her friend's dad took her and her best friend down and met up with me. So she has great memories. And then she's also gotten to, she's 16 and she's been to 16 different countries.
Wow.
And so it's neat watching her interact with other people her age and being compassionate for them. And I think she's picked that up from realizing America isn't the only place in the world, and there's other people that have good qualities about them, and just because they're from somewhere else doesn't mean that they're a bad person or that we make fun of them. And so it's been fun to watch her kind of grow up and see.
It's a lesson we can all learn.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, thank you, man. Again, I appreciate it. I appreciate everything. Absolutely a blast. Had a fun time.
Yeah, totally.
John Nunn, everybody. Adios.